The letter trembled in Helena Garrison's hands as she stood on the wooden platform of the train station in Carlin, Nevada, watching the dust settle from the departing locomotive that had carried her across half the continent to this God-forsaken stretch of desert in the summer of 1882. She had written honestly to the rancher, perhaps too honestly, warning him that she was 23 years old and already considered a spinster back in Philadelphia, that she had no dowry to speak of, that her family had cast her out after her father's debts consumed everything they owned, and that she possessed neither beauty nor charm enough to secure a proper marriage in civilized society. His response had been brief but startling in its directness, stating simply that he needed a wife who could endure hardship, not a porcelain doll who would shatter at the first sign of real life, and that if she was brave enough to come west, he would be waiting at the station in Carlin on the 15th of June. The platform was nearly empty now except for a tall man standing beside a weathered wagon, his hat pulled low against the brutal afternoon sun. Helena clutched her single carpetbag tighter, feeling the weight of every possession she owned pressing against her palm. Her dress was already sticking to her skin in the oppressive heat, and she could taste dust on her lips. The man stepped forward, removing his hat to reveal sun-bronzed features and eyes the color of winter storms, gray and assessing. "Miss Garrison." His voice was deeper than she had imagined, rough like gravel being turned over by wagon wheels. "Yes." She forced herself to meet his gaze, though every instinct screamed at her to look away, to retreat back onto the train and ride it anywhere else. "You must be Mr. Zachary. Warren Zachary." He nodded once, studying her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "Your letters said you were plain. You undersold yourself." Helena felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the Nevada sun. "I don't believe in false advertising, Mr. Zachary. I wanted you to know exactly what you were getting." "What I'm getting," he said slowly, "is a woman who traveled 2,000 miles alone to meet a stranger based on nothing but letters and desperation. That takes more courage than most men I know possess." He gestured toward the wagon. "Your trunk. This is all I have." She lifted the carpetbag slightly, watching something flicker across his face, pity perhaps or understanding. She could not tell which and was not certain she wanted to know. Warren took the bag from her, his calloused fingers brushing against hers for just a moment. "Then we'll make the ride easier. Come on, the ranch is about an hour north of town. We'll stop by the general store first. You'll need proper clothes for ranch work if you're serious about staying." "I'm serious." The words came out more forcefully than she intended. "I didn't come all this way to turn back at the first inconvenience." Something that might have been approval crossed his weathered features. "Good, because it won't be the first inconvenience, Miss Garrison. It won't even be the 100th. Life out here is hard in ways Philadelphia can't prepare you for." He helped her up onto the wagon seat, and Helena settled herself as gracefully as she could manage in her traveling dress. The wagon lurched forward, and Carlin began to unfold before her eyes. A collection of wooden buildings scattered along a dusty main street like dice thrown carelessly across a table. Men in dusty clothes walked between saloons and supply stores, and somewhere a dog barked ceaselessly against the heat. Everything felt raw and unfinished, as though the town had been sketched in charcoal rather than painted with care. "How long have you been ranching here?" Helena asked, desperate to fill the silence with something other than the creaking wagon wheels. 8 years. Came out after the railroad pushed through. Bought land cheap from a man who couldn't handle the isolation. Warren kept his eyes on the rutted road ahead. "Built the house myself, started with 50 head of cattle. Now I've got nearly 300 and enough land to support twice that many." "That sounds successful. It's survival." He glanced at her sideways. but it's lonely. A man can build an empire out here and still feel like he's living in a tomb. The honesty caught her off guard. Helena had expected practical arrangements and business-like discussions, not admissions of loneliness from a man she had met 10 minutes ago. Your letters mentioned you had no family nearby. No family anywhere. Parents died of fever when I was 16. Raised myself after that, worked cattle drives from Texas to Montana until I had enough saved to stake my own claim. Warren pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a building with a painted sign reading Morrison's General Store. That's why I placed the advertisement. I'm 30 years old, and I've spent half my life alone. Figured it was time to change that or accept that I die as solitary as I've lived. Helena climbed down from the wagon before he could help her, needing a moment to process his words. Inside the store, the relative coolness was a blessing, though the smell of leather and tobacco took some adjustment. A portly man behind the counter looked up with interest, his eyes moving between Warren and Helena with obvious curiosity. Warren Zachary, as I live and breathe. And who's this lovely lady, Miss Helena Garrison? My intended wife. Warren said it matter-of-factly as though announcing the weather. She needs practical clothes, Morrison. Work dresses, sturdy boots, a hat that will keep the sun off. Put it on my account. Now hold on, Helena interjected. I have some money saved. I can pay for my own clothing. Warren turned to her, and she saw something firm set in his jaw. You'll need that money for other things. Consider this an investment in the ranch. Can't have you collapsing from heatstroke your first week. There was logic in his words, but Helena bristled at the implication of charity. Still, pride was a luxury she could no longer afford, so she nodded stiffly and allowed Morrison to show her a selection of simple cotton dresses in practical colors. She chose 2 in brown and 1 in dark blue, along with a pair of leather boots that felt foreign and heavy on her feet. Warren paid without comment and carried her packages back to the wagon. As they left Carlin behind, the landscape opened up into rolling desert, punctuated by sage brush and distant mountains that shimmered in the heat haze. Helena watched it all with a mixture of fascination and dread. This would be her home now, this vast emptiness that seemed to swallow sound and hope equally. You're quiet, Warren observed after nearly 20 minutes of silence. I'm thinking. Helena smoothed her skirt, a nervous habit, trying to understand what I've done, having second thoughts. Probably my 100th thought by now. She managed a small smile. But no, not second thoughts, just realistic ones. You were right in your letters that I was desperate. My father gambled away everything we had, including his life. He shot himself when the creditors came. My mother died of heartbreak 3 months later, or so the doctor said. I think she died of shame. My younger brother went west to seek gold in California, and I haven't heard from him in over a year. I had nothing left except a choice between the workhouse or answering your advertisement. Warren was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the rhythmic clop of the horses' hooves. I'm sorry about your family. Don't be. I've done enough grieving for all of us. Helena turned to look at him directly. I told you all this because I need you to understand something, Mr. Zachary. I will work harder than you can imagine to make this arrangement succeed. I will learn whatever you need me to learn, do whatever tasks you require. But I cannot promise to be something I'm not. I'm not a romantic girl with dreams of love. I'm a practical woman seeking survival. Good. Warren's response was immediate. Because I'm not a romantic man, Miss Garrison. I need a partner, not a fairy tale. Can you cook? Adequately. I won't poison you, but I won't win any prizes either. Can you mend clothes, tend chickens, help birth a calf if necessary? I can learn. I'm not afraid of blood or hard work. Then you're already better suited to this life than you think. Warren pointed ahead to where a cluster of buildings emerged from the landscape like an oasis. That's home. The ranch house was larger than Helena had expected, a solid two-story structure built from timber and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Nearby stood a barn, several outbuildings, and a series of corrals where cattle grazed lazily in the fading afternoon heat. It was not beautiful by Philadelphia standards, but there was something honest about it, something real that appealed to the part of Helena that had grown tired of pretense. Warren helped her down from the wagon, and this time she let him. Her legs ached from the journey, and her head throbbed from the heat. He gathered her belongings and led her inside, where the interior was surprisingly clean and well-ordered. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall and simple but sturdy furniture arranged with care. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right. I'm in the second room." Warren set her carpetbag down near the stairs. "We'll marry at the church in Carlin this Sunday if that suits you. Pastor Thompson can perform the ceremony after morning service. Until then, you're free to settle in, explore the ranch, ask any questions you need answered." Helena nodded, exhaustion suddenly crashing over her like a wave. "Thank you, Mr. Zachary, for being straightforward if nothing else." "Warren," he corrected gently. "If we're going to be married in 3 days, you should probably call me Warren. Then you should call me Helena." She attempted a smile, though it felt awkward on her face. "Though I should warn you, I'm not accustomed to informality. You will be. Out here, formality is just another luxury we don't have time for." Warren moved toward the kitchen area. "I'll make us something to eat. You should rest. Tomorrow starts early on a ranch, and I've got work that can't wait." Helena climbed the narrow stairs to find her room simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a washstand. A window looked out over the desert, offering a view of the sunset beginning to paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. She set her carpetbag on the bed and sat down heavily, letting herself feel the full weight of everything that had happened. She had traveled 2,000 miles to marry a stranger. She was in Nevada, in the middle of nowhere, with no friends, no family, and no way back even if she wanted to retreat. The sensible thing would be to cry, to let out all the fear and uncertainty churning in her chest. But Helena had learned long ago that tears solved nothing, so instead she unpacked her meager belongings, changed into one of her new practical dresses, and went back downstairs to help Warren prepare dinner. He looked surprised to see her but said nothing as she moved to his side and began slicing bread while he tended to salt pork frying in a cast iron skillet. They worked in companionable silence, and Helena found something oddly comforting in the domestic rhythm. When they finally sat down to eat at the rough-hewn table, the food was simple but satisfying. "Tell me about the ranch," Helena said between bites. "What will my responsibilities be?" Warren leaned back in his chair, considering. "Cooking and cleaning, obviously. Tending the vegetable garden, gathering eggs from the chickens, churning butter when we have excess cream. During calving season, you'll need to help if I'm short-handed. I've got 2 men who work for me, Miguel and his son Carlos, but they have their own homestead about 5 miles south. They come up 3 times a week to help with the heavy work. And in return for all this, I get room and board and the title of Mrs. Zachary, and half of everything I own." Warren met her eyes steadily. "I had papers drawn up by a lawyer in Elko. When we marry, you become a full partner in this ranch. If something happens to me, it's all yours. If you decide to leave, you take half the value of the property and livestock with you. I won't have you trapped here with no options." Helena set down her fork, genuinely shocked. "That's extraordinarily generous. It's fair. You'll work as hard as any ranch hand, probably harder since there's no end to your shift. You should be compensated accordingly." Warren stood and began clearing the dishes. "Besides, I need you to have a reason to stay beyond fear of destitution. Fear makes people resentful. Partnership makes them invested. You've thought about this a great deal. I've had 8 years of lonely nights to think about it." He pumped water into a basin and began washing the dishes with practiced efficiency. "I watched my parents' marriage growing up. My father treated my mother like property, and she withered a little more each year until there was nothing left of whoever she had been. I won't repeat that mistake." Helena moved to help him dry the dishes, processing this unexpected revelation. "You're not what I expected, Warren Zachary." "What did you expect? Someone harder, crueler, perhaps. Men who seek mail-order brides often do so because no woman locally will have them, usually for good reason." Warren actually laughed, a rusty sound as though he was out of practice. "I suppose that's true enough. But I didn't seek a bride because I'm cruel or undesirable. I sought one because there are exactly 11 unmarried women in Carlin, and 10 of them are saloon girls who have no interest in ranch life. The 11th is Morrison's daughter, who is 15 years old and very much spoken for by the blacksmith's son. So it was desperation on your part too. Practical necessity," he corrected. "Same thing that brought you here. Maybe that's enough to build on." That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed listening to the strange sounds of the desert through her open window, Helena allowed herself to feel something that might have been hope. It was fragile and tentative, but it was there nonetheless. Warren Zachary was not cruel, not unkind, and not unreasonable. Perhaps this arrangement would work after all. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Warren woke before dawn each morning, and Helena forced herself to rise with him, determined to prove her worth. She learned how to make coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, how to fry eggs without burning them, and how to knead bread dough until her arms ached. Warren showed her the chicken coop and taught her how to gather eggs without getting pecked, introduced her to the temperamental milk cow named Bess, and walked her through the vegetable garden that desperately needed weeding. Miguel and his son Carlos arrived on Friday morning, both warm and welcoming despite their obvious curiosity about Warren's sudden bride. Miguel was a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and a ready smile, while Carlos was perhaps 25, quiet but hardworking. They spoke English well but occasionally lapsed into Spanish when discussing technical aspects of ranch work, and Helena found herself picking up words and phrases just from listening. On Saturday evening, Warren saddled 2 horses and asked if Helena could ride. She admitted she had limited experience but was willing to try, so he helped her mount a gentle mare named Daisy and led her on a slow circuit of the ranch property. The evening was cooler, almost pleasant, and Helena found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the horse's gait. "Tomorrow changes everything," Warren said as they rode along a ridge overlooking the ranch. "Once we're married, there's no going back. If you have any doubts, now is the time to voice them." Helena considered lying, offering him the confidence he probably wanted to hear. But their arrangement was built on honesty, so she opted for truth. "I have dozens of doubts. I barely know you. I have no idea if we'll suit each other beyond practical cooperation. But I also know that I have nowhere else to go and nothing else to hope for. So yes, I have doubts, but no, I'm not changing my mind." "Fair enough." Warren pulled his horse to a stop, and Helena did the same. "Then I'll tell you something I haven't said before. I like you, Helena Garrison. You're direct and honest and tougher than you give yourself credit for. I think we might actually manage to build something good here, given time." "Is that your version of a romantic declaration?" Helena asked, surprised to find herself almost teasing. "It's the truth, which is worth more than romance." But Warren was almost smiling as he said it. "Come on, we should head back. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." Sunday morning arrived bright and hot. Helena dressed in her least worn traveling dress, wishing desperately for something more appropriate for a wedding but making do with what she had. Warren appeared in a clean shirt and his best pants, his hair still damp from washing. They rode into Carlin in the wagon, neither speaking much, the weight of what they were about to do sitting between them like a third passenger. The church was a small white building at the edge of town, and Pastor Thompson was a jovial man with a round belly and wire-rimmed spectacles. He seemed genuinely pleased to perform the ceremony, and if he found anything unusual about the hasty nature of the marriage, he kept it to himself. Morrison and his wife served as witnesses, both beaming as though they had personally arranged the match. The ceremony itself was brief and businesslike. Helena repeated her vows in a steady voice, feeling the weight of each word. Warren's responses were equally measured, his gray eyes never leaving her face. When Pastor Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Warren leaned forward and pressed a chaste kiss to Helena's cheek, his lips warm and slightly chapped against her skin. "Well, now that's done," Morrison declared cheerfully. "You two should come by for dinner next Sunday. Let Emma here cook you a proper celebration meal." "That's kind of you," Helena said, finding her voice. "We'd be happy to accept." They signed the marriage certificate, and suddenly it was official. Helena Garrison had ceased to exist, replaced by Helena Zachary, rancher's wife in the middle of Nevada. The change felt surreal, as though she had stepped out of her own life and into someone else's. The ride back to the ranch was quieter still. Helena twisted the simple gold band Warren had placed on her finger, feeling its unfamiliar weight. She had not expected a ring at all, much less one that actually fit. Warren must have estimated her size from her letters, or simply gotten lucky. "You're thinking too loud," Warren said as they turned onto the ranch road. "I'm thinking that this might be the strangest day of my life," Helena admitted. "I'm married to a man I met 5 days ago. Does it feel wrong?" She considered the question honestly. "No. It feels strange, but not wrong. Is that odd? I feel the same way." Warren guided the wagon toward the barn, like something has shifted into place that I didn't even know was out of alignment. They spent the rest of Sunday in quiet domesticity. Helena prepared dinner while Warren tended to the evening chores, and they ate together as the sun set beyond the windows. When darkness fell, they both hesitated at the base of the stairs, the unspoken question of sleeping arrangements hanging between them. "I meant what I said about your room being your own," Warren finally said. "Marriage doesn't obligate you to anything you're not ready for." Helena felt something unknot in her chest. "Thank you for saying that. I'm just not sure what I'm ready for. Then we'll figure it out as we go." Warren touched her shoulder briefly, a gesture that was somehow both tentative and reassuring. "Good night, Helena." "Good night, Warren." The days began to blur into a pattern. Helena rose before dawn to prepare breakfast, spent her mornings tending the garden and chickens, her afternoons cooking and cleaning and learning the 1,000 small skills required to keep a ranch running. Warren worked from sunup to sundown, mending fences and moving cattle and handling the endless maintenance that kept everything functional. In the evenings, they ate together and talked, gradually learning each other's stories and preferences. Helena discovered that Warren had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he was tired, that he read voraciously whenever he had the chance, and that he had taught himself basic carpentry and blacksmithing out of necessity. Warren learned that Helena had wanted to be a teacher before her family's collapse, that she missed the opera and theater of Philadelphia with an almost physical ache, and that she had a surprisingly bawdy laugh when something genuinely amused her. 2 weeks after their wedding, Helena woke in the middle of the night to the sound of raised voices outside. She pulled on a robe and hurried downstairs to find Warren already awake, loading a rifle with grim efficiency. "What's happening?" she asked, fear tightening her throat. "Rustlers, most likely. Stay inside and away from the windows." Warren moved toward the door, but Helena followed him. "I can help. Tell me what to do." He turned to look at her, assessing. Then he grabbed a second rifle from the rack by the door and thrust it into her hands. "Do you know how to shoot?" "My brother taught me when I was 12. "Then get upstairs to the bedroom that faces east. If you see anyone trying to approach the house, fire a warning shot. Don't try to hit them unless you have no choice." Warren's face was hard in the lamplight. "I'm going out to the barn. Miguel should be on his way by now. He lives close enough to have heard the commotion." Helena nodded, her heart pounding, and climbed the stairs as Warren slipped out into the darkness. She positioned herself at the window, the rifle heavy in her trembling hands. Outside, she could hear cattle lowing in distress and the sound of horses moving fast. Moonlight illuminated the ranch yard in shades of silver and shadow. She saw Warren emerge from the house and sprint toward the barn, keeping low. Then another figure appeared, running from the opposite direction, Miguel by the silhouette of his hat. They converged at the barn, and Helena watched as they mounted horses and rode toward the northern pasture where the noise was loudest. Minutes stretched into hours as Helena kept her vigil. She saw nothing approaching the house, but in the distance, she heard what might have been gunshots. Fear for Warren warred with the knowledge that she would be useless out there, that her role was to protect the house and trust him to handle the rest. Dawn was breaking when Warren finally returned, riding slowly, his face streaked with dust and what might have been blood. Helena rushed downstairs and out onto the porch, the rifle forgotten. "Are you hurt?" She reached for him as he dismounted, her hands pattering over his arms and chest looking for wounds. "Not my blood. One of the rustlers got stupid." Warren caught her hands, stilling them. "I'm fine, Helena. We drove them off. Miguel is doing a head count now to see how many cattle we lost." "You could have been killed." The words came out sharper than she intended, born of hours of fear. "I've been dealing with rustlers since I started this ranch. It's part of life out here." But Warren squeezed her hands gently. "I'm sorry you had to spend the night afraid." "I wasn't afraid." Helena pulled back, suddenly aware that she was in her nightgown and robe in broad daylight. "Well, I was terrified, but I would have shot anyone who came near the house." Something shifted in Warren's expression, a warmth that had not been there before. "I believe you would have." "Thank you for having my back." Miguel rode up then, looking weary but satisfied. "We lost maybe 10 head, but we wounded at least 2 of the thieves. They won't be back anytime soon." "Good work." Warren clapped him on the shoulder. "Take the rest of the day off. Bring your family up for dinner tonight. Helena can cook enough for all of us." After Miguel left, Warren finally allowed himself to show his exhaustion. Helena insisted he wash up and rest while she prepared breakfast, and for once he did not argue. As she cooked, Helena realized that something had changed in the night. Watching Warren ride into danger, fearing for his safety, she had felt emotions far stronger than partnership or practical arrangement. The realization was both terrifying and oddly liberating. That evening, Miguel brought his wife Rosa and Carlos to dinner, and Helena prepared the largest meal she had attempted since arriving. The house filled with Spanish and English, laughter and stories, and Helena felt for the first time since leaving Philadelphia that she might be building a home rather than just occupying a house. After the family left, Warren helped Helena clean up, which had become their evening ritual. As they worked, Helena found herself watching him, noting the way lamplight caught in his hair, the strength in his weathered hands, the competence with which he moved through even the simplest tasks. "You're staring," Warren observed without looking up from the dishes. "I'm thinking," Helena corrected. "About this morning, about being worried when you rode out." Warren set down the dish he was washing and turned to face her. And I'm realizing that this arrangement of ours has become more than an arrangement, at least for me." Helena forced herself to maintain eye contact. "I care about what happens to you, Warren. I don't know when that started, but it's true." "Helena." He said her name like a prayer. "I've been half in love with you since you stepped off that train and told me honestly that you would only disappoint. You were so fierce and fragile all at once, determined to survive no matter what it cost you. How could I not fall for that? Half in love." Helena felt her breath catch. "Half because I was afraid to let myself fall completely without knowing if you could ever feel the same." Warren took a step closer. "But after watching you stand guard last night, after seeing you laugh with Miguel's family, after a month of you meeting every challenge this life throws at you without complaint, I think I'm all the way gone." Helena closed the distance between them, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. The kiss was nothing like the chaste peck at their wedding. It was full of weeks of tension and longing, of survival and partnership transformed into something deeper. Warren's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Helena melted into the embrace with a sense of rightness that she had never expected to feel. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Warren rested his forehead against hers. "I want you to know that you exceed every dream I had when I placed that advertisement. You're everything I didn't know I needed." "You told me I would only disappoint," Helena whispered, "but you've never once looked disappointed. Because there's nothing to disappoint." "You're remarkable, Helena Zachary." He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. "Come upstairs with me if you're ready." "I'm ready," Helena confirmed, lacing her fingers through his. "I think I've been ready for days now, I just didn't know how to say it." That night marked a new chapter in their marriage. Helena discovered that Warren was as considerate and patient in intimacy as he was in everything else, taking time to learn what pleased her, careful with her inexperience. She found courage she had not known she possessed, reaching for him with a hunger that matched his own. They came together with the windows open to the desert night, and Helena finally understood what it meant to belong somewhere, to someone. The summer deepened into blazing heat. Helena adapted to the rhythms of ranch life, growing stronger and more competent with each passing week. She learned to rope a wayward calf, to assist with minor veterinary work, to preserve vegetables for the coming winter. Warren taught her to shoot properly, to ride with more confidence, to read the weather signs that meant a storm was coming. They settled into a comfortable intimacy, stealing moments together whenever the workload allowed. Helena found herself smiling more often, laughing at Warren's dry observations about the cattle or their neighbors. Warren seemed lighter too, as though some burden he had carried for years had finally been lifted. In late August, Miguel's daughter Sofia was married to a young man from Elko, and half the county turned out for the celebration. Helena wore a new dress that Rosa had helped her make, and Warren looked almost uncomfortable in his formal clothes, but they danced together under strings of lanterns, while musicians played fiddles and guitars. Helena felt the eyes of curious neighbors on them, assessing the mail-order bride who had integrated herself into Warren Zachary's life, but she did not care. Let them look. She had nothing to hide or be ashamed of. Happy, Warren murmured as they swayed to a slow song. More than I ever thought I would be again, Helena answered honestly. Thank you for writing that advertisement. Thank you for taking a chance on a desperate woman from Philadelphia. Thank you for answering it. Thank you for being brave enough to build a life out of nothing but hope and determination. Warren pulled her closer. I love you, Helena. I should have said it weeks ago, but I'm saying it now. I love you completely. I love you too. The words felt natural, right? I think I started falling the moment you said I had undersold myself. You saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. As autumn arrived, Helena began to suspect she might be pregnant. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes prematurely, but when 2 months passed without her courses, she finally confided in Rosa. The older woman confirmed her suspicions and embraced her with tears of joy. Helena chose a quiet evening to tell Warren. They were sitting on the porch watching the sun set, as had become their habit on cooler evenings. She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. There's going to be 3 of us come spring, she said simply. Warren went very still, his gray eyes searching her face. You're certain? As certain as I can be. Rosa thinks I'm about 2 months along. Warren pulled her into his arms so suddenly and completely that Helena laughed breathlessly. When he drew back, there were tears on his face, glinting in the dying light. I never dared hope for this, he said roughly. A family. A real family. Well, you had better dare hope, because this baby is coming whether we're prepared or not. Helena wiped away his tears with gentle fingers. Are you happy? Happy doesn't begin to cover it. Warren kissed her with such tenderness that Helena felt her own eyes prickle with tears. You've given me everything I thought I would never have. Purpose, love, now a child. How did I get so lucky? We both got lucky, Helena corrected. 2 desperate people who found each other across thousands of miles. What are the odds? The winter was mild by Nevada standards, which Miguel said was a blessing. Helena's pregnancy progressed smoothly, though she tired more easily and had to scale back some of her heavier work. Warren fussed over her constantly, which Helena found both endearing and occasionally irritating. She was pregnant, not made of glass, and she insisted on maintaining as much of her routine as possible. They spent the long winter evenings planning for the baby, discussing names and making preparations. Warren converted a small room near their bedroom into a nursery, building a cradle from pine wood and sanding it smooth with painstaking care. Helena sewed tiny clothes from fabric Rosa helped her choose, marveling at how small everything was. In March, when the snow was melting and the first hints of spring were emerging, Helena went into labor. Rosa came to help, along with a midwife from Carlin named Mrs. Fletcher, a no-nonsense woman who had delivered half the babies in the county. Warren paced frantically outside the bedroom until Rosa finally took pity on him and let him sit with Helena between contractions. You're supposed to be strong right now, Helena panted, gripping his hand hard enough to leave marks. Not looking like you're about to faint. I've birthed 100 calves and never felt like this, Warren admitted. I'm terrified, Helena. What if something goes wrong? Then you'll handle it, because that's what you do. Another contraction seized her, and she bore down with all her strength, focused entirely on the task at hand. Hours later, as dawn broke over the desert, their son was born. He came into the world screaming his displeasure, red-faced and furious, absolutely perfect. Warren cut the cord with shaking hands, and Mrs. Fletcher placed the baby on Helena's chest, skin to skin, still slick and wrinkled and beautiful. What should we name him? Helena whispered, exhausted and euphoric. Warren traced a finger down their son's tiny cheek. Thomas, after your father. He might have made mistakes, but without him, you wouldn't be here and neither would our boy. Helena felt tears slip down her cheeks. Thomas Warren Zachary, it's a strong name. Thomas was a demanding baby who did not sleep through the night for months, who seemed to find new ways to be difficult with each passing week. Helena was often exhausted, her body still recovering while adjusting to the constant needs of an infant. But when she looked at Warren cradling their son, singing to him in a rough off-key voice while pacing the floor at midnight, she felt such overwhelming love that it almost hurt. Summer came again, marking a full year since Helena had stepped off the train in Carlin. The anniversary coincided with Thomas being 4 months old, finally settling into something resembling a schedule. Warren surprised Helena by arranging for Rosa to watch the baby for an afternoon, while he took Helena on a ride into the desert. They rode for over an hour, farther than Helena had ventured since Thomas's birth, until Warren stopped at a small spring-fed pool surrounded by cottonwood trees. It was an oasis in the middle of nowhere, peaceful and private. "How did you find this place?" Helena asked as Warren helped her dismount. "I used to come here when the loneliness got too heavy, before you." Warren spread a blanket under the trees and they sat together, the sound of water trickling over rocks a soothing counterpoint to their conversation. "I wanted to show you something. Proof that beauty exists out here, even in the harshest places." "I've already learned that lesson." Helena leaned against him. "Beauty exists wherever people create it with care and effort. Our ranch is beautiful because we've built it together. Our son is beautiful because he came from love. This place is beautiful because you shared it with me." "When did you become such a philosopher?" Warren teased gently. "When I married a man who taught me that practical and romantic aren't mutually exclusive." Helena turned to kiss him properly. "I love you, Warren Zachary. Thank you for seeing potential in a woman who thought she had nothing left to offer the world. The potential was always there. You just needed space to let it flourish." Warren held her close. "I'm the one who should be grateful. You took a massive risk on a stranger, and you've made my house a home, my solitary existence a family. Everything good in my life traces back to the day you stepped off that train." They spent the afternoon at the spring, talking and laughing and making love under the cottonwood shade like newlyweds rather than an old married couple. As the sun began to set, they rode back to the ranch where Thomas was waiting, probably hungry and indignant at his parents' absence. The years unfolded with their share of challenges and triumphs. They added to their herd, improved the ranch buildings, survived droughts and harsh winters. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and showed early promise as a horseman. When he was 3, Helena gave birth to a daughter they named Grace, who proved to be as fierce and stubborn as her mother. 2 years later came another son, Samuel, sweet-tempered and gentle, who preferred books to horses but loved the ranch nonetheless. Warren expanded their operations, buying adjacent land when it became available. Miguel eventually retired and turned over most of the work to Carlos, who had married and started his own family. The Zachary Ranch became known throughout the county as one of the most successful operations, but more importantly, as a place built on partnership and respect. Helena found ways to bring culture to their remote corner of Nevada. She started a lending library in Carlin, organized musical evenings where neighbors gathered to share songs and stories, and eventually convinced Warren to help her build a small schoolhouse on their property where she taught not just their own children but those of neighboring families. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren presented Helena with a stunning gift, a music box he had ordered from San Francisco that played arias from her favorite operas. Helena cried when she heard the familiar melodies, so far from the concert halls of her youth, but no less meaningful. "You remembered," she whispered. I remember everything you've ever told me about your life before, Warren said. I can't give you Philadelphia or opera houses, but I can give you pieces of that world when I find them. You've given me something better. Helena took his hands. You've given me a life I chose, rather than one that was chosen for me. That's worth more than any opera. That night, after the children were asleep and the ranch was quiet, they sat together on their porch watching stars spread across the desert sky. Helena reflected on the terrified woman who had arrived 10 years ago with nothing but a carpet bag and desperate hope. She could barely recognize herself in that person now. You ever regret it? Warren asked, as though reading her thoughts. Leaving everything behind, coming out here. Not for a single moment. Helena rested her head on his shoulder. My old life was dying by inches. This life, as hard as it's been, has let me thrive. I've become someone I actually like, and I owe that to you. You owe it to yourself. You did the work, made the choices, committed to building something new. Warren kissed the top of her head, but I'll take credit for recognizing quality when I saw it. You told me I was everything you dreamed of, Helena reminded him. That first day, you said I had more courage than most men you knew. And I was right. You proved it every day since. Warren pulled her closer. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher with no charm and too much pride. Thank you for taking a chance on a desperate woman with no prospects and too much honesty. Helena turned to kiss him. We've built something remarkable, you and I. As the years continued to pass, the Zachary Ranch became a fixture in the community. Thomas grew into a capable young man who managed more and more of the daily operations, allowing Warren to finally slow down a bit. Grace shocked everyone by deciding to become a teacher like her mother, heading to San Francisco for training. Samuel discovered a talent for veterinary work and apprenticed with a doctor in Elko. Helena watched her children grow with pride and occasional melancholy. The house that had once echoed with crying babies and childhood laughter grew quieter. But she and Warren adapted, as they always had, finding new rhythms and pleasures in the relative peace. On a spring evening much like the one when they had first married, now 25 years in the past, Warren and Helena sat on their porch as the sun set over the desert. They were both grayer, more lined, their hands showing the wear of decades of hard work. But they still fit together perfectly, still reached for each other instinctively. You remember what you wrote in your very first letter to me? Warren asked. I told you I would only disappoint. Helena laughed at the memory. I was so certain I had nothing of value to offer. And I told you that you were braver than you knew. Warren lifted her hand to his lips. I should have said you were remarkable, that you would transform not just my ranch but my entire existence. That you would teach me what it means to build a life with someone rather than just alongside them. We taught each other. Helena squeezed his hand. You showed me that I was stronger than I believed, that I could survive and even flourish in circumstances I never imagined. You gave me space to become myself, and you gave me everything I didn't know I was missing: love, family, purpose beyond simple survival. Warren stood and pulled Helena to her feet. Dance with me. There's no music, Helena protested, but she moved into his arms anyway. We'll make our own. Warren hummed tunelessly as they swayed together on the porch, moving to a rhythm only they could hear. Helena closed her eyes and let herself sink into the moment, feeling the solid warmth of Warren's body against hers, the gentle evening breeze cooling her face, the sense of absolute rightness that had characterized their life together. They had built an empire from nothing, raised children who were strong and capable, created a legacy that would outlast them both. But more than that, they had found love in the most unlikely of circumstances. Two desperate people who had taken a chance on each other, who had chosen partnership over pride, honesty over pretense. They had grown together rather than apart, had faced every challenge as a united front, had built a marriage that was both deeply practical and wildly romantic. "I love you," Helena whispered against Warren's chest, "just in case I don't say it enough. You say it every day, even without words." Warren kissed her forehead. "But I never get tired of hearing it. I love you too, Helena. You're everything I dreamed of and more than I deserved." "We both deserved this," Helena corrected firmly. "We worked for it, fought for it, built it from nothing. This is ours, and we earned every moment." As full darkness fell and stars emerged overhead, they remained on the porch, holding each other close. In the distance, they could hear cattle lowing, the sound of horses in the corral, all the familiar noises of the ranch that had become home. Thomas was in the barn checking on a mare about to foal, carrying on the traditions his parents had established. Grace would return from San Francisco in a few weeks, full of stories and plans. Samuel was due home from Elko for Sunday dinner, probably bringing news of his latest patients. Their life had turned out nothing like Helena had imagined on that sweltering June day when she stepped off the train in Carlin, terrified and alone. It had been harder, more demanding, more exhausting than she could have possibly anticipated. But it had also been richer, fuller, more rewarding than any fantasy she might have constructed. Warren had been right all those years ago. She had been brave, braver than she knew. Brave enough to leave everything familiar, brave enough to build a new life from scratch, brave enough to open her heart to love when she had thought herself incapable of such vulnerability. And Warren had proven worthy of that bravery, meeting her courage with his own, his determination with hers, building alongside her rather than expecting her to simply support his dreams. "What are you thinking about?" Warren asked, his voice rumbling through his chest where Helena's ear rested. "Everything and nothing. How far we've come. How lucky we've been." Helena pulled back just enough to see his face in the starlight. How a desperate advertisement and an honest letter changed everything. "Best investment I ever made, that advertisement," Warren smiled. "Though I should probably thank whoever convinced the newspaper to run personal notices. They don't know it, but they brought me the love of my life. The love of your life who told you up front she would disappoint." Helena still marveled at the irony. "You've never disappointed me once." Warren's voice was fierce with conviction. "Not when you burned your first batch of bread, not when you fell off your horse learning to ride properly, not through the difficult births or the sleepless nights or any of the 1,000 challenges we've faced. You've exceeded every expectation, Helena Zachary." Helena felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all these years, his words could still move her. "You've exceeded mine as well. I thought I was settling for security, but I gained a partner, a lover, a best friend. I thought I was entering a business arrangement, but I found a marriage that most people only dream about. Then we're even." Warren wiped away the tears that had escaped down her cheeks. "Though I'd argue I got the better end of the deal." "We both won," Helena said firmly. "That's what makes it work." They stood together under the Nevada stars, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something that would endure long after they were gone. Their children would carry forward the values they had instilled, the work ethic and honesty and capacity for love that had characterized their parents' relationship. The ranch would continue to thrive, a testament to what could be built with determination and partnership. But beyond the practical legacy, beyond the land and cattle and buildings, Warren and Helena had created something more ephemeral and more valuable. They had proven that love could grow in the harshest soil, that two people with nothing but hope and honesty could build a life of profound meaning. They had taken a mail-order marriage, a transaction born of desperation on both sides, and transformed it into a love story that neither of them would have believed possible when they started. Helena thought back to that terrified woman on the train platform, convinced she had nothing to offer, certain she would disappoint. If she could speak to her younger self now, she would say that the disappointment was impossible, that the journey ahead would be difficult but so rewarding, that the stern-looking rancher waiting with his wagon would become the great love of her life. But perhaps her younger self needed to make that journey blind, to discover her own strength through trial rather than being told about it. Perhaps Warren needed to take his own leap of faith, trusting that a desperate woman from Philadelphia could become the partner he needed. Some things could not be shortcut, could not be promised in advance. They had to be earned through the daily work of choosing each other, over and over through good times and bad. "We should go inside," Warren finally said, though he made no move to release her. "Morning comes early." "Morning always comes early on a ranch," Helena replied. "But yes, let's go in. I'm getting cold." They walked inside together, Warren's arm around Helena's shoulders, moving through their home with the ease of long familiarity. The house was quiet now, with all the children grown and mostly gone, but it still felt full, saturated with years of life and love and laughter. As they climbed the stairs to their bedroom, Helena reflected that she had finally found what she had been seeking without even knowing it. Not security, though she had that. Not respectability, though she had earned that as well. But belonging, the sense of being exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly the person she was meant to be with. Warren had given her that gift, and she had returned it in kind. Together they had created a home, a family, a legacy. Together they had proven that the best love stories were not the ones written in the stars, predetermined and fated, but the ones built brick by brick, day by day, through the conscious choice to stay and work and grow together. That night, lying in bed with Warren's arms around her, Helena drifted off to sleep feeling utterly content. The mail-order bride, who thought she would only disappoint, had instead become everything her rancher dreamed of. And more than that, she had become everything she had never dared to dream for herself. The desperate woman seeking survival had found not just life but a reason to live, not just shelter but a home, not just security but love. And the rancher who had sought nothing more than a helpmate to ease his loneliness had found a soulmate, a partner in every sense, someone who challenged him and supported him and loved him with a fierceness that matched his own. Together they had built something beautiful in the harsh Nevada desert, an oasis of love and family and purpose. Their story was not the dramatic romance of novels, full of grand gestures and sweeping declarations. It was quieter, more practical, built on shared work and honest communication and the daily decision to be there for each other. But it was no less profound for its simplicity, no less moving for its roots in practical necessity. Helena Garrison had stepped off a train in Carlin, Nevada, in the summer of 1882, with nothing but a carpetbag and fear of disappointing the stranger who had agreed to marry her. Helena Zachary lay in her bed 25 years later, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived, secure in the knowledge that she had disappointed no one, least of all herself. She had been brave enough to take a chance. Warren had been wise enough to recognize what he had found. Together they had created magic from the mundane, romance from practicality, and a love that would endure as long as the desert itself. Their story was proof that sometimes the best things in life came not from careful planning or lucky breaks, but from the willingness to step into the unknown and build something new with whatever materials were at hand. As sleep claimed her, Helena's last conscious thought was one of profound gratitude. Gratitude for the desperation that had driven her west, for the advertisement that had offered hope, for the man who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself. Most of all, gratitude for the life they had built together, imperfect and difficult and absolutely perfect in its own way. The mail-order bride had found her home. The lonely rancher had found his family. And together they had found love, the kind that lasted, the kind that mattered, the kind that made every struggle worthwhile. In the end, that was all anyone could ask for and more than most people ever found. They had been lucky, yes, but they had also been brave and honest and willing to work for what they wanted. And that, Helena thought as she drifted into dreams, made all the difference in the world.